Eleanor had lived in her quiet coastal town for nearly 40 years, yet the rhythm of her days had never felt quite as heavy as it did now, in her late 60s. The cottage she once shared with her husband Samuel sat perched above the sea, its windows forever streaked with salt and wind. Samuel had passed nearly a decade ago, and though she had adjusted in small ways, there remained a silence in the rooms that pressed against her chest whenever dusk arrived. She woke early each morning, listening to the gulls, waiting for the kettle to whistle. She liked the rituals. Opening the curtains, feeding the stray cat that lingered near the porch, brushing her silver hair back before gazing at her reflection in the kitchen window. Yet under those steady routines, she felt something restless, an unspoken longing that she dared not voice even to herself. It was on one such morning, with her robe half folded at her chest and the ocean mist drifting through the cracked window, that everything changed. A knock at the door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors were rare. For a moment she froze, clutching the edges of her robe as if that thin fabric were her shield. When she opened the door, a man stood there, older, weathered, his eyes carrying the familiarity of years long past. "Eleanor," he said softly, almost unbelieving. It was Richard. A name she had buried decades ago. A friend once closer than any. A companion in the reckless brightness of youth. Long before Samuel had stepped into her life. He was supposed to have moved across the country, chasing work and a new family. Yet here he was, standing on her porch as if time itself had bent backward. Her breath caught, and with a flush of embarrassment she realized how exposed she felt. Robe loose, hair undone, her morning self unprepared. "I wasn't ready for this," she whispered. Though whether to him or to herself, she wasn't sure. Richard smiled faintly, as if recognizing the moment for what it was. Fragile, unguarded, human. He didn't step closer. Instead he waited, giving her the space she needed. What followed wasn't the sudden sweep of romance or the rekindling of old flames. It was something deeper, quieter, almost more dangerous. The awakening of memory. They spoke for hours that day, sitting in her sunroom overlooking the sea. She had to steady her hands against the teacup as he told her about his own years. His losses, his regrets, the way he sometimes thought of her when autumn leaves fell. She listened, torn between the woman she had become and the girl she once was. The days that followed stirred something long dormant in Eleanor. She found herself walking more, wandering the cliff paths she had once avoided, because they reminded her too much of what she no longer had. She began painting again, her brush scratching out blues and grays of the restless sea. Her daughter noticed when they spoke on the phone. "You sound lighter, Mom." But beneath that renewal lingered a fragile truth. Eleanor was still learning how to live openly, still learning to face herself. She hadn't been ready when Richard first appeared. Yet maybe that was the point. Maybe readiness was an illusion. Life had never asked her permission before handing her loss, before pulling her into solitude. Why should it ask permission before giving her a chance to feel alive again? One evening, as the sun melted gold across the horizon, Richard stood by the porch railing, his hands resting lightly on the wood. Eleanor joined him, this time not hiding herself, not clutching a robe against her chest. She simply stood, present, shoulders bare to the wind, eyes steady on the sea. And in that silence, she realized she wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. Not by him, not by the world, not even by herself. Her story wasn't one of dramatic confessions or impossible romances. It was the story of a woman who had lived, who had endured, and who even in her later years, discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the most honest form of strength.